What's up, everybody? Welcome to the SWAT MMA podcast. I'm Jarrod here with Paul.
What up?
Coming to you from Las Vegas, Nevada. Today, we're going to be smoking and talking all about the UFC. We're going to recap the Apex fight night that saw Holly Holm get choked out. Rather surprisingly, we're going to talk about the BKFC, which saw Dave Mundell retain his middleweight title. We're going to talk about Francis Ngannou versus Tyson Fury in boxing. And we're going to talk about a potential opponent that would be legitimate for Francis Ngannou's first fight in the PFL next year. Before we get to the combat sports, though, you know what time it is. Grab your stash, fire it on up. Let's get into the weed of the week.
Smoke weed every day.
All right, so this week we have a real new, pretty rare strain out in from California. We have some Blackberry Gary, which is a mixture of Sunset Sherbet, some Gary Payton Powers Up, and some Skittles V times 2. VX times 2, sorry.
VX, yeah.
So this is a 50-50 hybrid, and it's made by Surge Cannabis. So this one's, what makes it like super rare is the Gary Payton strain that it is made with was finally selected from over, what did you say, like
Yeah, the
202?
phenotype they used that they went on, they searched for over 400 seeds, 4 made it through, and 2 became mother plants.
It's crazy.
And then 1 they were able to fucking make a harvest from and clone out.
And I mean, Gary Payton's one of those strains that has come out from cookies that has gained a ton of popularity, not only from its namesake of, being attached to Gary Payton, the basketball player, but also being a really great strain. And I think this is just one of those that take it to the next level.
Yeah,
It's
this
got a
is
real
Surge
nice
Cannabis'
smooth-
debut strain. It came out in September of 2022, so just a few months ago. And, based on interviews with him, he's really seeking to make some really new and unique flavors based, of course, on the terpene profiles of the cannabis. And this one, for me, is a fucking real winner.
Yeah.
The blackberry notes are legit. Oftentimes with these types of strains, I find that the notes are almost a wish. You know what I mean? The flavors are like, it's almost psychosomatic, like with wine, I think.
Yeah.
But this is almost reminiscent of a lot of the citrus strains, which have that strong orange. The blackberry flavor on this is almost equal to the strength of some of those, like a Dole Whip with the pineapple and coconut flavors that you pull up real easily. I think this is a great entry if you like fruity strains.
Yeah.
And the balance, you said it's a 50-50 hybrid, and I got to say that seems accurate in how it makes me feel. I get a nice balance between head and body on it. I've been smoking on this. Picked it up yesterday. Really pleased with that so far. We got some super sour diesel left over from last week too. We're gonna be smoking on, and I even got this pen here. This is Resonates Cherry OG, which has a ridiculous flavor. Like the cherry on here. How did you describe it?
It literally tastes like the bottom of the cherry juice in like a bowl of maraschino cherries. It's very fucking pungent, super.
Yeah, I find it really interesting because supposedly, again, this is, from my understanding, done with cannabis, strain-specific cannabis terpenes only. They're not adding cherry flavor to this, which is shocking. I'm hoping on my other podcast to be able to sit down or talk to or interview somebody from Cannovative about this line of products to answer that question, because I would really like to know.
Yeah.
Because all of their flavored vapes are really strong on that. Like the melon ball that we had a few weeks ago tasted just like honeydew and cantaloupe melons. It's crazy. And it's to the point where you can even smell it when you open up the packaging. So, I don't know. It's pretty wild shit, but that's like 80% THC too. So we're popping over here.
Yeah.
Hope you're smoking on some good shit today too. And of course, we want to thank our sponsor for this Weed of the Week segment, which is Binoid. You can get good deals on Binoid CBD products and their Delta 9 THC products if you go to our website, which is what, Paul?
SWATMA.com. Then hit the cool stuff button and you can check out all those deals.
Now, let's puff down. I'm going to hit this bowl. And let's start this show off, dude. I want to start it off a little bit differently. Let's talk about Francis Ngannou and mixed martial arts. Then let's talk about Francis Ngannou and boxing, because over this past weekend, we had a big KSW event that went down, and it sparked a lot of talk actually since then about a legitimate opponent for Francis Ngannou, because that is one thing his PFL deal has gotten a lot of criticism for, isn't that right?
Yeah, and a lot of people have been talking about maybe the PFL's inability to get someone who's going to be a big enough name for Francis to get, for not only the juice to be worth the squeeze with how much they're paying, but is going to be on that same skill level as Francis.
Well, that name Phil DeFries might be familiar to some UFC fans. He was in the UFC dating all the way back through 2011 to 2013. He was young. He didn't do so well. But since 2017, the man has been on an absolute tear. He is on a 12 fight win streak. He's undefeated in KSW, which, for those of you listening, if you perhaps are unfamiliar with that, that's a large promotion based in Poland, which gets actually really big numbers over there. They fill stadiums. They've had 57 something thousand people at their events live before. Just because it's not big here in America doesn't mean it's not big globally. And he is now, with his victory, which was a second round submission victory this past weekend, he's now in his ninth straight title defense. Well, it's impressive. There's no denying it. People might scoff perhaps at some of the competition, but at some point those numbers really start to add up and mean something, don't they?
Yeah, especially at heavyweight where things can just like change on a dime when it comes to power and just the size of the individuals. It's really hard to rattle off not only 9 but 12 straight wins. That's pretty nuts.
Yeah, he beat Sizemon Bajor by technical submission, a rear naked choke. It was KSW 84. Before that, he TKO'd Todd Duffy in the first round, just lit Todd up, man. Which was unfortunate for Todd. We're fans of his on the show. He's a good dude, but he got destroyed. And he's got, if you go down his victories here on his Wikipedia page, and we've got TKO, TKO, submission, TKO, 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 decision, decision, submission, TKO, submission, TKO, TKO, TKO. He's fucking people up.
Yeah,
Is my point.
yeah,
He's a big boy. He's 6'4", around 250, and he's big enough in Europe that a cross promotion between KSW and PFL, which they've already shown interest in, could do a legit stadium show over there.
yeah. And it kind of goes back to what you were saying from before. Um, just because it's not huge over here does not mean it's not huge over there. You know what I mean? And I think if you were to put that, like you were saying, in a stadium, it commercially would do pretty well. But I think like live gate wise would be a fucking wild, wild event.
Yeah, I think it'd be a home run. They could probably do an 80,000 seat stadium. They were already talking about it. The owner of KSW has already proposed that idea. He's tweeting out pictures of the two, of DeFries and Ngannou,
Mm-hmm.
and calling for it. PFL has already indicated that they're open to this type of thing.
Yeah.
And they really need something like that with Francis, anyways, because at this point, based on what they have, we're resurrecting kind of over the hill guys like a Verdum,
Mhm.
you know.
Well, and with that being said as well, I do think if you're talking about, where the UFC is going with their like talent pool, I think that someone like Phil DeFries would, if not be fighting Francis next, could find himself right back in the UFC very soon if this were to fall through. You know what I mean? This guy is on a tear, and he's one of the best heavyweights in the world that is not necessarily getting to fight all the other ones.
Yeah, there's no denying it at this point. And I think that would be a great fight. So let's keep that on the radar here with Francis. I'm liking that his story is kind of shaking out for the good here.
Yeah, it's everything
The
he asked for.
the first bits of criticism, they're already kind of falling away to the wayside, like it was he'll never get to fight. Now he's got to fight. There won't be anybody for him to fight in PFL. There's already somebody emerging, and there's still plenty of time to find somebody else.
Yeah.
I feel that DeFries is a legitimate fight for him. That's not a. I don't think that's him fighting any type of tomato can.
Yeah, no.
Now, more information is coming out about this Tyson Fury fight since we've last talked as well.
Yep. It's actually official now.
It's official. It is a professional bout. It's going on their records. Currently, the WBC title is not up for grabs, which makes sense to me.
Yeah, me too.
There is not a mandatory challenger for Usyk. From what I have read, the Saudis planned big heavyweight showdown card they wanted to do in December. They've changed their mind and now they wish to do it in towards the end of the first quarter of next year, which is why all of this opened up. So we've got Usyk fighting his mandatory against Dubois. We've got um, Ruiz and Wilder angling for each other.
Are they gonna do that now?
They're yapping back and forth about it.
Sounds
They're each saying the other one didn't want that smoke. We'll see.
Interesting.
And now we've got, of course, Fury doing the one-off here with Ngannou.
Yeah.
Which is getting the typical criticism you would expect, but some of it I think has gone over the top. Namely, Kevin Ioli's criticism, and now Chael Sonnen's criticism is just outrageous. I don't know if you saw his post earlier today where he is calling Tyson Fury a bully and a coward for making this fight because he's just going to kick Francis's ass so bad that only a bully would do such a thing, and a man who's scared to face, it's nonsense. It's absolute nonsense.
Yeah. I think it's all, been put on by one Dana White.
Kevin Ioli's basically a UFC shill at this point.
Oh, yeah, he always has been.
I mean, come on.
During the Conor shit, during the, the John Jones, drama he's had in the past, he seems to have always took the UFC side and never the fighter side. And that's what he'll be he'll be one of the names that was wrong in the end, and just like Dana, he is. It doesn't matter how anybody feels about what kind of level of chance Francis has. The win in all this is getting the fight, getting the payday, and getting the fuck out of his UFC contract. And he did all that. So everything anybody else has to say is really invalid at this point. Whether they challenge the validity of the fight, the aspect in which that they think that invalidates it is just doesn't make any sense anymore, because it's happening. It doesn't matter what they feel like, it's happening. And that's really the biggest thing I would say. One thing I do want to talk about a little bit with this fight is there's been varying reports on what we're talking about money-wise.
Yeah, I was just pulling up the latest on that. Jake Paul has chimed in on Francis's.
Yeah.
Supposedly, we've got a report that he's only getting $8 million.
Base, obviously. That's without pay-per-views and shit like that.
Now, normally I don't put a lot of credence to things that Jake Paul says, but he might know some shit about this type of thing.
Yeah.
He does know his money. You got to give the guy credit with that. And his fellow PFL signee and Nate Diaz's upcoming opponent, Jake Paul, says that Francis Ngannou's takeaway is much more. In a recent tweet, Jake Paul said, quote, Francis is getting 8 figures, not 8 million. Get it right.
Interesting. And honestly, here's the thing. 8 million, 8 figures, doesn't matter, because every single part of it is at least 10 times more than what he was getting in the UFC. I was looking up the other night, just kind of, getting ready for this conversation. Francis's highest payday in the UFC was his last fight against Cyril Gane, where he made $650,000. So it doesn't matter at this point if he's only making $8 million base. If he's making $8 million base and it turns into, let's say, on the back end, 20, 25, 30 million in the end, that doesn't matter. It's still a win, because what the UFC was paying him was so low. And people want to come back and go, whoa, $8 million doesn't make any sense. The UFC offered him a $10 million contract. Yeah, they offered him a $10 million contract for 5 fights. So that's $2 million a fight at best.
And there's most likely a win bonus situation in there too, where that's if he won all 5 fights and maximized his value, he might get that much money.
So with that being said, whether it's 8 million, whether it's 50 million, or anything in between, it's still a win.
Now, the other person we have chiming in on this is his manager, who Now, look, there is some vested interest in blowing these numbers up and,
Yeah.
and saying more than that they actually are. But so take it with a grain of salt. But what he said was that he wasn't going to reveal the actual amount that Francis was getting paid, but it was without a doubt, it was more than all of the money he had made in the UFC currently, plus more added to that all the money he would have made if he had signed the contract the UFC offered him and done as well as he could with that. The
So yeah.
sum from this payday is more than all of that combined,
Okay.
which doesn't sound that outrageous, which is why I tend to believe it a little bit. If you think about, they offered him about a $10 million contract max,
And he probably made around 4
and I've
or
heard he's made
5.
between 3 and 4 million
Yeah.
beforehand. So okay,
Yeah.
so there's like $13 million that he's roughly made.
A
in his
$15 million
UFC career.
contract is not crazy.
And him getting 15 mil plus a back end on this is not crazy at all, because what a lot of people aren't understanding is this isn't like Al Heyman's not putting this fight together.
No.
This is put together by Saudi money. That's why it's in Radaya, or however you say it. Forgive
Yeah.
my ignorance. But I do know that they're looking to put on massive sporting events, and they're not looking to make money off of it.
Well-
it's an investment in another part.
Yeah.
It's not. They're trying to not to bank. It doesn't matter if they don't make money, if it doesn't sell. They don't care about that.
Yeah.
They care about being a prestigious sporting destination.
Yeah.
And building that up.
And I just want to break this down for people outside of the sport of MMA. We're talking about the same guys were ready to offer Lionel Messi up to $1 billion for a 5-year contract to go play soccer in Saudi Arabia. They
Yeah.
paid upwards of, you know, $200-300-400 million to countless golfers to play in live golf. They don't care about this idea of like you were just saying. It's not like, oh, it's the biggest sell of all time. No, it's about having the biggest fights of all time in that region and in their stadiums, in their countries.
Right. They're
and,
looking
you
to
know,
change world perception. They're not looking
Exactly.
to make money off an individual event right now. They're investing in the future of their country, whether you believe that's the right thing for them to do or not. It really doesn't matter.
That doesn't matter, yeah.
Like that, and we're not talking about the moralities of that region,
No.
or sports washing, or none of that shit being right or wrong. We're just
talking
talking
about the
about the
sporting
facts.
aspect
that
and
this
what
is what
they-
they're
yeah.
doing.
And the just the endless disposable income that they have.
Right. And the way this relates to Francis Ngannou is this motherfucker's getting paid, and it doesn't matter if it sells 1 million pay-per-views or 500,000 pay-per-views. He's going to get a big fat bag.
Let's talk about that for a second. Where do you think this best case, like, give me a floor ceiling on how many pay-per-views this does?
I think some of it depends on the price. If they keep it around $50, I think that they shouldn't have a problem doing 500,000, and they should be able to do 1 million if this is promoted correctly.
Yeah.
I don't see why not. Francis Ngannou's got a tremendous story. Tyson Fury's a showman. And it's got the freak show element that should bring in the casuals. I mean, Conor versus Floyd worldwide did something like 6 or 7 million pay-per-view buys. Now they
the
only
highest
talk
selling
about the
pay-per-view of all time.
4.9 million or whatever that was US based, but worldwide I know it did even more than that.
Mm-hmm.
Now this won't do that well because it's not going to have that build up.
Yeah, it's not gonna be a world tour.
Like Conor is a special star, and Ngannou's not that guy, and neither's Tyson Fury for that matter.
Yeah.
But there
Tyson
is
Fury's
definitely
close.
something there.
Yeah. So give me a number, floor ceiling.
I say it's going to do 800,000
And what's the lowest
as
you
the
think
high.
it does?
Maybe $1 million. 350.
Yeah, I'd probably say around the same. I think it does like on the lowest of lows, it does like $250,000, and the highest of highs, I think it does like 1.5. Because what we saw, and that would put it like somewhere in that top 10 all time, right? Because yeah, something like that.
You put it somewhere in there.
Yeah. All right. So let's stick with a little bit of the boxing side of things. Let's talk about bare knuckle boxing though.
Over BKFC 47.
Yeah, over the weekend we saw Dave Mendel get Mike the Marine Richmond out of there in the second round in his first title defense since he had won the belt. After the fight, calls out Mike Perry. What are your thoughts?
That dude packs a lot of power. I mean, he by his own admission, he wasn't fighting very good in the first round until he got knocked down by the Marine, and then that just kind of woke him up. And then after that, he really went on a tear. I mean, he knocks Richmond down. I think it was twice in the first round, or once in the first, twice in the second before the stoppage. Um, Him and Perry is going to be a dogfight. Like Dave Mundell is no joke. I mean, we've
Yeah.
had him on the show. He's a real serious guy. He takes the fighting serious. He's a hardworking guy, and Perry is tough as nails, and they're kind of similar, not in their personalities, but in their fighting abilities
Yeah.
and the power that they're packing.
Hmm.
He might be able to fucking knock Mike Perry out, actually.
Yeah, and I think it's going to be real interesting to see what they do to get Perry to back into the BKFC because he has talked a little bit recently about he's doesn't know if he's going back to BKFC, doesn't know if he's going back to MMA, doesn't really know
Right.
what his next move is. So this fight over the weekend could have been that come on, come get the
And
belt.
Richmond's an elite. I mean, for
Oh yeah.
those, I mean, BKFC is still pretty young. He is one of their top tier, definitely prior to that knockout, in the top 5 fighters in their entire
Yeah, he's up
promotion,
there
if
for
not
sure.
the top 3.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, he's right up there with Louis Palomino
Hmm.
and obviously Lorenzo Hunt, and then him, right? I mean, who else was it?
Yeah.
Only now he's coming off now back-to-back knockouts, so he's tumbling from that post a little bit. But you couldn't ask for a bigger statement win for David Mundell than that
Absolutely.
against the best person he could be fighting. That's
Yeah.
not named Mike Perry.
Yeah.
Now
That's
he
true.
just got to cross his fingers and hope Perry resigns.
Hmm. Yeah, I think it's a real good fight for them, and I think it's maybe could even headline the next Knucklemania.
Yeah, definitely. And Perry with the title shot. It'd be a good build up too.
Right.
I'd like it.
Perry's like a wild version of Dave Mundell.
Yeah.
like they look kind of similar, they fight pretty similar, and like Mike Perry's just a fucking crazy person.
Yeah. Yeah. Mundell's a much more quiet, reserved. You know what I mean? Like blue collar, working class dude. Where Perry's a lot more flamboyant.
Yeah.
It's a good event overall, though.
Yeah.
Another winner in the bank for BKFC. Now let's shift a little bit. We had another lackluster event, dude, at the fucking Apex.
Yeah.
I didn't watch it. And I'm not going to pretend that I did. I can't do the Apex cards anymore, but I did catch, of course, the main event, which saw. I really thought Holm was going to win that fight. I'll just be frank.
Yeah.
And instead, she gets just a nasty, nasty guillotine choke put on her.
Yep.
And then now we've got Bueno Silva calling out Juliana Pena for that vacant title shot instead of Raquel Pennington, and talking a little bit of shit at the press conference afterwards. She was kind of funny.
Yeah, it's interesting too because she also trained as an American Top Team, so her and Amanda probably have crossed paths quite a few times, and kind of said that her overall sentiment to it was like she wanted to keep the belt in Brazil and all that good stuff. It's an interesting
legit?
fight.
You think she's a legit contender for the title?
You got to be if you do what you just did to Holly Holm.
Right.
No one does that. Like, and even in the people who have beat Holly in the last few years, it's more been like real close decisions or, it's not go out, dominate, choke her out, and put her to bed like in the first round. That's pretty crazy. We haven't seen that at all, really, since, that's one thing about Holly that's kind of been in this portion of her career. She's fought a lot of these contenders and had some mixed results, and even in the close fights she's lost, she's never looked, outmatched. And in this fight, she was outmatched.
Clearly.
Yeah. But it does put the UFC kind of in a weird spot though, because you do have Juliana Pena there, who pretty much is, kind of maybe the more cemented contender that is going to be in that vacant title shot.
I
But
guess.
I
I
mean,
mean, it's hard to deny her because she got the
she was the
victory
champion.
over fucking
Yeah.
Nunes, but as the rematch so clearly showed that it was a Matt Serra-esque, not fluke, but it was the
I can
right
see what you're
moment and the
saying.
right time for her to get to victory. It was the combination of her aggressiveness and her skills that met up with Amanda's lackadaisical preparation and attitude in that fight.
Yeah.
And it showed in the second fight where there was really no need for a third. I don't think a trilogy fight was ever going to happen. Look, sometimes they don't happen. They're just not needed. Sarah GSP never had a trilogy. Nobody was fucking crying about that, were they?
No. Yeah.
I mean, I just think the similarities there are pretty strong. I mean, you know, Amanda put it on her so bad in that fucking rematch. It was like, well, do we need to see this again? I mean,
Yeah. No, I feel that.
kind of cemented the narrative from the first one, which was Pena took an advantage of a mentally compromised Amanda Nunes. Is what she's supposed to do. That doesn't take anything away from Pena, but it doesn't mean that you have equal skills. You didn't
No,
inherit
I don't
Amanda's
think
skill set.
I don't
You're
think
not
it means
better
that
than her.
either. But I also do think that coming from being the champion 2 fights ago, losing the belt, and then the belt being vacated, kind of similar to where like Jan Blachowicz was at.
Yeah,
Like you kind of give that person the benefit of the doubt of being able to at least be in that vacant title fight.
yeah.
Who she fights, there could be 2 or 3 different options. You know, you still have like Caitlin Vieira out there. You still have Raquel Pennington, and then obviously Bueno Silva has such a big win over Holly Holm. You know, it,
The talk thus far has been her and Raquel Pennington, and I'm a fan of Pennington's. I think she'd win that fight.
you think so?
Yeah. I could be jaded. I just don't like Juliana Pennington. I've never liked her.
I
I
know
never
you
thought she
never
was that
liked her.
good. But
You always have
that's
not
just the
liked
way it is.
Juliana
I'm always
Pennington.
going to just, but I'm willing to admit my bias.
Yeah, I
But I
feel that.
think Raquel Pennington has really come into her own, over the past few years. She's
Yeah,
really improved her game and is fighting at that elite level.
yeah.
But I had no idea that Puerto Silva was good like that. I really didn't.
I
She
don't think
kind of flew
anybody
under
did.
my radar.
Yeah, she flew under the radar for
I
sure.
thought she was just kind of a sacrificial lamb for
Hmm.
Holly to get, in the title shot mix, honestly.
Yeah.
And now look,
Well,
I believe
and
she's 5-0 in the UFC now.
yeah,
I could be wrong. I'm pretty certain that was the numbers. I don't have them in front of me at the moment, but
and honestly, she's kind of what this division needs. Is kind of something me and you had spoke about when Amanda retired. That there was kind of going to be this recycled amount of a bunch of recycled names that are going to be in this title picture now because
geez.
it once was Amanda and all these people she beat, and now that those fighters have a chance, like let's talk about this for a second. But also, you got people like Ronda Rousey going out on social media talking about this WWE run I've been on is stale. I'm gonna come back to the UFC and show everyone why I was really the baddest woman on the planet. Like, oh, you think there's any coincidence that that just so happened to be right after Amanda Nunes retired? No way. So there's just going to be this kind of recycled number of like contenders that are going to come into the picture, like Holly Holm. If Holly Holm would have won this fight on on Saturday night, she would have been in the title fight against fucking Juliana Pena, and there would be no questions asked because now Amanda's gone. It opens this door for all these people that have been Amanda's beat. Holly, Ronda, Misha Tate, all these ladies are now back in the picture.
Oh, that Ronda shit is just embarrassing. I'm sorry,
Yeah,
but could you be more transparently afraid of Amanda Nunes? I mean,
or out of touch with the sport. I don't think she has any chance against Juliana Pena. I don't think she has any
no,
chance
Juliana
against
Pena
Raquel
whooped that
Pennington.
ass, boy.
Yeah,
The game
Raquel
is done
Pennington will whoop
past.
Ronda's ass too.
The game is past Ronda Rousey by years ago. Years ago. You're gonna
Fuck,
embarrass herself.
Misha will whoop her ass.
Yeah, these are active fighters now.
Yeah,
Ronda's game has not evolved. Pena would destroy her.
yeah.
Like, no, no, I don't even want to see it. I don't. I'm not a. Please don't.
Yeah, I agree. But with that being said, we'll see what happens next. So now let's kind of dive into next week's UFC Fight Night. This one is a pretty good card overall.
Is this at the Apex, or
Not
we actually
sure
have a
on
crowd
that
for
one.
this one?
Not sure on that one. This is kind of a redemption card, though. If you look at the top, uh, we have Tom Aspinall taking on Marcin Tybura in Aspinall's first fight since he tore his ACL, fighting Curtis Blades in that big main event, which was going to kind of be, the taking off point for him being in that title picture. Right now, he sits at number 5. I think Tabura is number like 8 or 9, something like that. Um,
Yeah, yeah.
it's just like a good chance for Tom Aspinall to wash that bad taste out of his mouth from that last fight. When you know losing by an injury TKO is always kind of a weird thing in the UFC because you definitely still lost, but it's circumstances beyond your own control. And yeah, and then also in the co-main event we have Molly McCann trying to get things back on track. So this should be interesting for the
I'm
top
not going
two.
to pretend I know who her opponent is. It's a fighter. It looks to me with a record of 10, 8, and 2 that they're kind of bringing in the hopes that Molly can
It's a tune-up.
get a little bit of a tune-up in there.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with that. Honestly, I wish they did it fucking more in mixed
Yeah,
martial arts
for
than
real.
they tend to do. So I think that's good for her. She's a good fighter. She's entertaining.
Yeah.
Um, and she always gives it a good go.
Hmm.
So we've got Nathaniel Wood versus Andre Touchy-File.
That should
That's a
be a
decent
good one.
fight right there.
That could be a fight of the night candidate.
Paul Craig dropping back down to middleweight. He's always fun against Andre Munoz.
That should be really interesting grappling wise, because you got Paul Craig, who's one of the best grapplers in all of mixed martial arts, and you got Muniz, who's a former world champion in jiu-jitsu as well. So it's those kind of fights where there's going to be some scrambling for sure going on. That should be interesting though for Paul Craig going back to 85, because I think that his biggest mistake when he would get into these, fights at light heavyweight was he would come in just a little bit smaller than guys. I think we really saw that in his last fight against Johnny Walker. Johnny
Yeah.
Walker looked fucking humongous, and Craig looked like a middleweight. You know what I mean? And so this should be a real interesting fight as well. How do you feel about the main event?
I think Tom Aspinall is supposed to win it. I think he's supposed to go in there, keep it standing, get to KO.
Tybor's a live dog though. That dude is no
Tybura
joke.
is very legit,
Yeah.
but this is a setup for Aspinall to prove he deserves to be in the title contention.
Well, just speaking betting wise, right now, they do have Tybor at a plus 333 underdog.
Ooh.
Yeah, and trust
Oh.
me, I as I see this fight as you do, as far as like Aspinall kind of getting back on track, and this is the fight to do it. But at plus 333, I mean, it's not the worst bet in the world.
No, actually, if that stays at those odds, I would consider putting some money
Just
down.
put a little bit of money on it, just see what
I
happens.
mean, a heavyweight who's legit
And Tybor has
plus
been known in the
300
past
over
to,
plus 300 odds is always, I think, a live bet.
and in the past too, he's been known to be the guy who spoils the big you know the hype train. I would say he
This
did it
is
with
from
Greg
the
Hardy.
O2 Arena.
Oh,
in
is it?
London.
Oh, sick.
Oh, see, I didn't even know. That's so much better.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, and that was when the last London card is when Aspinall fought last when he tore his ACL.
Yeah, okay. Thank God. That's a lot better. That explains why we got Molly McCann headline. I was like, why would they put Molly McCann in the fucking Apex?
Oh yeah, no thanks.
Yeah, that's a
She's
lot
too
better.
live. She has too much energy for the Apex. She'd blow the roof off the place with nobody in there.
Yeah, this is Tom Aspinall's chance here. Yeah, he's plus 330, minus 440 on Aspinall. That's crazy, dog.
I mean, it's crazy, but at the same time, Aspinall is a fucking good fighter, man. He's probably one of the most well-rounded heavyweights in the whole division
His
outside of John
striking is
Jones.
legit too. He's got power. His fight IQ seems to be good. He moves real nice.
He's got jiu-jitsu too and
Yeah.
wrestling as well.
It's number 5 versus number 10.
Yep. But the only thing that sucks is at heavyweight is there's really no defined role to get yourself to a title shot right now.
No.
With Jones and Stipe announced now, like it's just weird because that could be a double retirement moment where like Jones beats Stipe, jumps on the mic. It's like I've done it all. I've beat him. I beat the so-called greatest heavyweight of all time, and now I'm the greatest heavyweight of all time. Peace. You know what I mean?
Stipe could retire right then
And
there.
Stipe could be like, man, that sucked. Taking
Stipe
two.
could win and he could
yeah.
retire.
Oh, same way too. Yeah, it's been good. It's been great. Peace out.
Yeah, either way, there's a strong chance that the UFC belt could be vacated after that event.
Mm-hmm. Which is crazy. There's just kind of this turning of the guard now, right now, in the UFC as a whole. We're starting to see some of the people that were so key in that moment where the UFC became a real national like juggernaut of a sport are starting to just slowly but surely be gone. We're seeing every fight card, every fight night, every every pay-per-view, it's just another guy gone. Another. To think Jose Aldo doesn't fight for the UFC anymore.
Mm-mm.
To think fucking all the guys, Robbie Lawler, possibly Jones and Stipe, Daniel Cormier, you know pseudo Conor McGregor. You know what I mean? He's kind of retired, but not really. Like
Yeah,
he's
but yeah.
yeah. It's just crazy because now like all these titles are going to be changing hands and new stars are going to be born. And I think Tom Aspinall has a real chance to be one of those stars.
Yeah, definitely.
He's good on the microphone too. He can definitely generate a crowd as we've seen in these last couple fight nights he has headlined over there. It's drawn wild, you know, crowds that have made everybody appreciate him even more since COVID, times to now. Um, so yeah, I think this is a huge chance for him. And to round out the show today, we were talking about right now vacated titles.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, we have another vacated title in the UFC as Jamal Hill tore his Achilles over the weekend and had to vacate his light heavyweight title.
He actually tore it during International Fight Week. News didn't come out for a minute. Playing a fucking pickup basketball game against Daniel Cormier.
Ugh. It's just even worse. Jeez. But let's talk about it where it kind of leaves the division. So we have Yuri, we don't really know what his status is medically. I
He's
mean,
definitely not coming back in the next 30 days or anything.
no,
We
yeah.
can't book a fight with him.
And then we have this fight coming up in 2 weeks from now.
Yep.
That is basically supposed to be who he fights for the vacated title, which is Jan Blachowicz versus Alex Pereira.
This is obviously it's at 205, but this is Pereira's debut at 205.
Which begs the question, though, with that being what everyone, including the UFC, has called the number one contender fight, why don't you just make that for the vacant title and then we move on and that winner fights Yuri
The only
Prochazka?
thing that I've heard against that argument right now is that these two fighters have been preparing for a 3-round fight, and you'd be bumping it to a 5 on
And
like
that's
2 weeks' notice.
And that's
the
also
only downside I've heard.
Yeah, and that's also what we have heard. Well, that's also why we saw someone who is Alex's teammate in Glover Teixeira back out of that original fight versus, what was it? He was going to fight Jan, or he was going to fight, what's that, not British guy, the Dagestani guy.
Yeah, Magomedov.
Yeah, Magomedov in, a couple months back when Hill ends up winning the title.
Right.
Right. So now I feel like we're right back where we were at, though. It's like, do they do it? Is it worth it?
Well, what about Jan Blachowicz versus Alex Pereira for that title? Does Alex deserve that shot? Think about it for a second. With his, what is he, 7-2 in all of mixed martial arts, coming on his third title fight? That'd be pretty wild. I mean, he won the title, then he loses it. He doesn't get the rematch. Goes to light heavyweight, walks his way into a title shot yet again just by bad luck for Hill. What if he were to win?
Then he deserves it.
Wouldn't that be crazy if he beats Blachowicz? I think that's a tough out for him anyways. But then again, maybe not. Maybe he's so fucking good. And did you ever wonder how he made 185?
That's what I'm saying.
Did you ever look at that man and go, I don't understand what's happening here?
Yeah.
Because that's one of the largest weight cuts in the UFC. That's like the 55 to 70 jump.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And it's big dudes, and he's not fat.
No.
He's very, very lean.
He was in the cage versus Izzy at 226. That was 24 hours later.
Like, how compromised was that man? And I'm not trying to take shit away from Izzy at all. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying, how compromised has he been at 85 that maybe we don't even know? Maybe he doesn't even know. I mean, he could come in at 205 and be a whole different fucking beast because, like, he's fully hydrated.
Yeah.
He's possibly even bigger.
Yeah.
And he could unleash hell on Blachowicz.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, what if he goes in there and KOs the dude that fucking beat Izzy at his venture into 205? I mean, it just opens up the whole chapter of their rivalry again.
Oh yeah, it opens the
because of who
whole
he
Pandora's
beats.
box
You know what
of
I mean?
fights,
He beats the guy who beat Izzy.
Mm-hmm.
Oh fuck, bro.
And then Izzy really has, outside of Drakus, once he were to fight Drakus and win, there's really nobody outside of like Strickland and Bo Nickel, I guess, that really like, could make any kind of sense like pay
Chimaev,
per view wise.
perhaps.
Yeah, but is he even an 85? We don't even
Who
know.
knows? That dude's
Um,
on ice.
and that just begs the question, like why don't they run it back at 205? He always said he still wanted to go back to 205
Well,
eventually.
I would think Izzy would want to get these fights back because he can feel
Yeah.
as happy as he can about that victory, but he's still down in the series. Like
Yeah.
if we were doing this as a scoring as a series, like in playoff sports, he's lost.
Yeah.
Was it 3-1?
Something like that.
Yeah, he's 1-1 in MMA and 2-0 in kickboxing.
Yeah.
So he's down 3-1 against this guy. You'd think he'd want to fucking at least do the rubber match in MMA. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Kickboxing aside, at least get it back in MMA.
Yeah, and then you're just down to him in kickboxing, but you got the edge in
what it
MMA,
is.
which
Yeah.
you're both doing it now. You got
Which
all
you
the
can-
bragging rights back.
Yeah, and then especially with someone like Israel Adesanya, you can totally spin that and be like, "Psh, you beat me in kickboxing. When we really fought, like when we could do whatever the fuck we could, I whooped your ass."
But then, dude, does Izzy want to go up to 205 again without gaining the proper weight and fight a guy that's even bigger now?
What if he does do it the right way though? What if Izzy views 185 as just a wasteland of guys he's beat and doesn't feel like
Basically,
he has to really defend that title and just decides to go up to 205 permanently.
I mean, he could take a year off and bulk up.
Yeah, not
but
even.
just the
I don't even think he would have to take a year off. I think he would just have to change the way he trains because it doesn't. From what I've seen, like whether it's like countdowns and all the because he does a really good job of documenting his career. Um, I see a lot of like ways in which he trains that keeps him the size he is.
okay.
So I think maybe if he were to, kind of focus more on the physical aspects of things, but also that's kind of not him too. So I don't know. It's interesting of how he would get to 205. It'd be an interesting story, I think too.
This injury to Hill just makes this fight between Pereira and Blachowicz that much more consequential, even if the UFC decides not to make it for the title for some reason. But I really don't. Even if they make it an interim, perhaps they do it for that. I don't know what the benefit there would be since the title's vacated and there's not an injured champ actually sitting out.
Yeah.
He relinquished it.
But I also think there's an image thing that the UFC does not like, and that's having a vacant title in having a number one contender fight and not making it for said vacant title. We've seen it countless times over the last couple of years that if a title's vacated, it's pretty much given to whoever was going to fight for the belt next, anyways.
I think it's just a matter of time before they make that announcement.
Yeah. Well, and something I follow like this MMA messaging board on Facebook. It gets kind of stupid sometimes. Don't get me wrong, but I saw that the UFC, some dude who like owned a bar, said that the UFC sent them an email and posted the email that said, "Order UFC 290 now for your bar or restaurant, featuring 2 title fights between Justin Gaethje and Dustin Poirier and Jan Blachowicz and Alex Pereira."
Yeah.
Which
there you go.
It's an easy sell, like exactly what you said.
It is an easy sell, and it adds more legitimacy to the supposed title on the line between Gaethje and Poirier, which is an awesome fight, but a ridiculous thing to call a title.
No.
Because if that's a real title now, like they're treating it, and not just that one-off thing for that fight, like I thought it was, then how come Masvidal, every fight of his afterwards wasn't for that title? That doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
Like all the guys that kicked his fucking ass on the way out the door should be passing that title back around.
Yeah.
Like, you don't just win it and then
it is what it is.
You retire and then people fight for it after you got your ass kicked how many times? I'm baffled by the need for the UFC to do that.
Well,
so what is the winner of this fight? They just remain the BMF no matter what happens until they retire, and then there'll be another one. You're that till you retire. Is that how it works?
I don't really know.
Or is it just basically on how the UFC needs it in case they don't have a title fight to put up there, something you can defend?
That sounds a lot more likely in this scenario.
I don't know. It's a silly thing, but
But we'll get more into that next week as we go over that fight card and get closer to that. But I think that about wraps us up for today.
yep, for sure. Thanks for tuning in, everybody. Thanks to Binoid for sponsoring our Weed of the Week segment. You can get good deals on their products. Plus, you can find pretty decent deals on some clothing items from the UFC store as well. And how about the podcast? You simply use the links where?
SWATMA.com, or you can head over there, hit the gear button, buy a t-shirt, support the podcast. Then you can head over to Instagram and follow us at SWAT MMA Podcast.
Thanks, everybody. We'll see you next week.
Peace.